Oh, sugar. Hello, and welcome to the Permaculture Vine podcast live with Permaculture Canada. We've got Maria McKenty from Permaculture Canada here today. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. So, you want to just give yourself a brief 30-second introduction, please?
So my name's Maria McKenty. I'm part of the team with Lindsay Brandon at Permaculture Canada, and we've worked together for a couple of years in that project, and then we've also worked together previously on a couple other remote design projects. And I have my own design and build company here on the west coast of BC, Canada.
Great stuff. So, a question I always ask first is, how did you discover permaculture or first hear the term?
I actually saw the cover of the book when I was 16, and I did my design course with Lee Harrison in New Mexico when I was 18. So I've been at this 30 plus years now.
Wow. So when you say the book, are you on about the
original designer's manual? Yeah.
There it is there.
Different cover. It was the one with the hands with the tree, and I didn't get a chance to read it. I just saw the cover, and I was already interested in, repair and regeneration and all of those things, and was sort of scratching my head as a teenager going, oh, what do we get? Things are a mess. How are we going to fix it? And when I came across permaculture, it was sort of, it looked like the best toolkit I have seen and since seen to try and do some repair and also get what we need in a least harmful way that we can while supporting the rest of the biosphere.
Great. And did you do your PDC straight away when you seen the book, or what? How did you go from discovering it to PDC?
So I saw the book and I was 16, and then 2 years later, I moved countries that year, so it was a little busy. And then 2 years later, I did my PDC with Lee Harrison in New Mexico. And then I came home with my head spinning, as you do, and started sketching out designs on paper for anybody who would let me. And then about 3 years later, started doing landscaping work as my income, and have done a lot of other things in between, but have been doing design work since my early 20s.
So you're in Canada?
I am. I'm in British Columbia.
So different climate than New Mexico?
Different climate than New Mexico, but the principles are transferable. And then I did other training with Larry Santoyo. He came out. I was living in the interior BC at that point, and then also Amelia Hazelip, and I worked on a biodynamic farm for a season, and also trained with. He's passed away now, but he was part of the Bear Tribe. Simon Henderson. Did a greenhouse course. Got interested in biochar and all of those things. Did some training with Elaine Ingram. Went to the first Permaculture Voices conference, went to the to Pioneers the year that it was Bill Mollison, Vandana Shiva, Paul Hawken, and John Todd. They were all there the year that I happened to be there. I sat like 3 chairs away from Bill Mollison in the audience. I was poking my friend. I'm like, that's Bill. Bill's over there. So it was really neat to get to see all those folks in person as a new and young designer, and just kind of get to see everyone's different take on it and their specialty. Worked a little bit with, did a couple weekend workshops with Michael Pilarski as well, and then got really interested in herbal medicine and have specialized somewhat in the crossover between medicine gardens and permaculture.
Great. We'll go over that. It'll be interesting to find out more about all the different trainings. But do you want to tell us about your PDC? It was 2-week residential, was it?
Yes, it was residential, and it was, interestingly, it was women only. So it was something that Lee had noticed when she was teaching, that and this was the early 90s, that in her courses she had very few women. And so she decided to start doing women-only courses. And so we were there. I think we actually had one fellow in our course peripherally because it was the husband of the woman who was hosting the course, and it was supposed to be at a summer camp or something in the off season, and it almost got canceled. And so one of the participants said, hey, if everybody's up for camping and we'll share my kitchen and I'll put Lee up, we'll just do it at my place. So I had the opportunity of getting to also hang out with Lee in the evenings and have her tell stories about where else she taught and her adventures as a international designer. She was in I think she said she was in the first or second cohort with Bill. So it was really nice to get that first generation. She's from Australia, so we had some funny language things where for the first 2 or 3 days, none of us could understand why she was talking about building dams and what the heck were chooks. But once we got that sorted out, we were fine. But it was great. Our classroom was a straw bale barn, and we got to do our sort of practice designs for our hosts right there, and it was a real international group as well. So different climate, but at that point, I had just recently moved to BC from California, so it was more similar climate-wise than interior BC, and then I did more training once I was back in BC to get more familiar with a temperate version and how to work with the principles in a slightly different zone.
Yeah, it's interesting that you went to a women in permaculture. Do you think there's more? There's a demand for that still?
I think there might be in some instances. Sorry, I'm having a not good name day, but there's some folks in Oregon who just did basically an earthworks course for women. They're the water restoration folks. Their names are going to be really familiar. I'm blanking on them. And they were finding that they didn't have very many women having the opportunity to actually learn the machine work. And so they hosted a 3 or 4 day course for women to learn to build ponds and drive backhoes and all of that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go, but it is I think there is, for that part of the skill set, I think there is still a significant niche to have some classroom time set aside so that really beginners with using those earthwork machines can learn to feel comfortable, not have the stress of being in a group of people that already know how to do it. And so it's a more level playing field. I'm working on a project now where my co-designer got to learn to drive excavator. I'm like, okay, I want to learn to drive excavator. My turn.
Yeah, that's great fun. I find getting women to come on the podcast is more difficult.
Interesting.
And requires a different approach. The best example I can give is Crystal, our co-founder. She has 3 PDCs. She's a TA for Jeff Lawton. She's been a team leader for a design company. And I asked her to come on. She said, what would I come on for?
Yeah.
And then you ask some men who have just cut the grass one day and not used fertilizer. Yeah, I'll come on.
Yeah.
They're more likely to say yes straight away. And it just takes a different approach. That's why if you look through the podcast, there's probably more men on than women, but it's just, I don't know. I find it just more difficult. And then women tend to, not all, I'm not generalizing here, but it's just more likely to back out because of that confidence thing. Maybe. And that's my guess. I don't know.
This is only my second podcast. So
yeah. Well, you agreed straight away, so it was great.
Well, I'm also, Lindsay really encouraged me, and I'm getting more comfortable with teaching. And so to me, it's just another opportunity to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and maybe I can pass on something interesting that'll spark some interest for someone else, and they'll get excited about learning more. So I think also sometimes it's I don't know. It could be a lot of different things. It could be, also just juggling lots of different things, and harder to keep a schedule, or, needing to be more flexible about timing or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. We could speculate all afternoon on that.
Yeah. So all that training you did then after, so you said you practiced designs after your PDC, and then you set up a landscaping company. Do you want to tell us about that 2-year transition then after PDC?
So after PDC, my head was literally spinning. I was just like, okay, I have so much information. Where do I start? And at that point, I was living in a small sort of semi-abandoned orchard in the BC interior. And so one of the first things I did was to start looking at, okay, what can we do to bring this piece of property back to its production and things like that. And also connected with the Kootenai permaculture movement, which was just getting started at that point. So I did sort of stuff for friends and family for a few years. I was doing other things for work. And then 21, 22, it's actually a really good story if you want to hear the whole story.
Yeah.
So I was working as a housekeeper actually for a resort, a family, in another nearby town. And I was hitchhiking to work 3 days a week. And I was they were moving, it was seasonal. They had seasonal housing on their site because they had rental cabins for the summer tourist trade kind of thing. And then they'd live in the lodge in the winter and move out. So they were moving a building to their property. So they had a proper house for their family and that they didn't have to move out of every 6 months or so. And they brought this house from another part of town on skids. And there was sort of this pile of dirt and half basement. And I was looking at it and I said to the owner, I said, you could do something really nice with that dirt. You could make terraces and have a garden and all these nifty things instead of just having this pile of dirt outside your house. And they said, oh, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, you could do all this cool stuff. And part of my job was taking care of their young son. And he said, well, do you want to make a diorama with Galen in the sandbox and show me what you mean? I'm like, sure, I'll do that. So their son was about 2 or something. So we made this nice little diorama, had little sticks and stones for terraces and planned out this whole garden. And he came by about an hour later and said, oh, yeah, that looks great. Let me go get the wife. He got her and she said, oh, yeah, that's great. We should totally do that instead of just this pile of dirt. And so they were all excited. And at the end of the afternoon, he said, okay, great. I have to go to town tomorrow. Can you be here to direct the bulldozer? That was my first job.
Yeah, that's class.
It was great. I mean, they were wonderful first clients. I was already working for them. And so in addition to the other things I was doing, we built these beautiful rock terraces around their house, imported soil. I learned some things about proper questions to ask if you're bringing soil onto the site, about where it comes from, etc. And we had a fabulously abundant first-year garden for them right outside their house. They had too much food. I was taking it home by the shopping bag full because they had too much food for the 4 of them. And then I moved towns, and there's actually a photo of that garden on my website. It's the oldest photo on there. Is I think it's from 1989, maybe 90, something like that. So anyway, that was my first big project, and then I carried on doing mostly smaller projects for the next couple of years, and then moved cities a couple times. So every time you move cities, you got to restart the business. And so the most recent restart was in 2015. I moved to Victoria and worked there for 5 years, and I had the privilege of doing some full yard projects there as well. My brother bought a house and let me do his yard, and we took it right down to the subsoil, other than 3 existing fruit trees, and built it up from there. And
that's interesting. So you've restarted the business several times in several places. Have you any advice for people starting up then, and any good examples or bad examples of what not to do?
I think looking back, it would have been really helpful if I'd had some business coaching, like actually had somebody, like I've sort of figured stuff out now, but had somebody sit down with me and say, okay, this is what you need to think about. This is how you're going to handle your back end. This is how you set up your bookkeeping, and you're making sure you have all the right tools, and so that you can grow the business sustainably. I've always ended up being mostly a one-woman show, and then I have small crews I hire a crew for the size of projects, so I don't have to keep a big crew employed all the time. I know it would be a bigger business if I had a full-time crew, but it just has worked out better for me because I do a variety of things, to just have a small crew. I think one of the resources that's available now that's really helpful for people is there's actually a Foodscaper podcast out of Tennessee. It's a fellow who's run a Foodscaper business, and it's permaculture adjacent, and because they're also doing very similar things. I think he does have permaculture training. It's just a slightly different way of framing what we're doing. So this is slightly easier for people to wrap their heads around. And he's got all kinds of good podcasts and tools for people just starting out, particularly on the business side of it. Because I'm mostly self-taught in that regard, and it's a really tough road. I've made some mistakes. I think one of the biggest things is someone told me at some point, you want clients you can hug. And that's been so true. It's like, if you wouldn't want to sit down and have a cup of tea with them in their house, don't take on a big project. Like a small project, maybe, but a big project where you're looking at, tens of thousands into hundreds of thousands of dollars, don't take it on unless you feel comfortable with them and as a person. Or the other way to go to do that is have really good contracts. Like, have people sign contracts, really over explain what the process is going to be and what they're going to be paying for, and all the different check-in points in terms of the budget, and make sure that they actually read the contracts and sign them. Because sometimes people get over enthusiastic. They say they want something, but they don't have any idea how much it's going to cost. And so there's always this process of trying to prepare the client for what the cost is actually going to be to have something done on a large scale, especially if you're starting a new project where you don't have materials, you don't have soil, you don't have plants, and they may not be people who can do a lot of DIY. That's the other thing, is I always try and talk to my clients and say, okay, if you want something, a big project, like a full yard project, it's like, okay, great. This is going to be super fun. It's going to be expensive. You can minimize some of that expense if you want to be part of the crew, and basically I'll teach you as I go and we work on it together. Otherwise, if I'm hiring 5 or 6 people and excavators and machines and carpenters and making their dream permaculture garden for them, it costs adds up. Especially here in BC, our labor costs are quite high at this point, and our materials costs are getting higher. Like my plant costs probably went up 15 to 20% just from last year.
It's a big jump in 1 year.
It's a big jump. It's painful for people. And I still do projects in Victoria, but I also work on a small island, and we're 2 ferries away from any of our large suppliers. So anything we have to bring in bulk, we're paying huge shipping costs. So it's a matter of scale. I mean, certainly if you're helping somebody or just consulting, it's a different kind of thing. But if you're actually taking on large installation projects and want to make that part of your business, I really recommend that people get a business mentor or invest in some coaching, or particularly for the business side of it. It's not that you can't do it. I think it will save people a lot of stress and repeatable mistakes if they can get some help ahead of time. Graham was great. Graham helped me with some things that I hadn't quite figured out yet, and I've had lots of help along the way, but it wasn't something that I thought about as a new designer of how to do the business part of it. So it just saves some people some time.
Yeah, I've struggled getting my own leads. I was getting leads from another company, but in fairness, I haven't really. I've been learning about making the correct offer, and then what is your offer, and who's your target, who's your customer, who you're looking to serve.
Yeah,
it's been my issue. So I am actually sort of relaunching my offer. So I'm basically looking now to help in that initial stage, helping people when they decide, right, they want a permaculture design, observing their land.
Yeah.
Advising them on like how much time do they have, what do they want to grow, what's realistic.
Yeah.
So trying to be more like a coach in that early stages.
Yeah.
And then referring them to the likes of Permaculture Canada, then they if they need a full design. Some people don't need a design; they just might need just a point in the right direction. So that's what I'm focusing on. So we have a free observation guide. If you just want to put observe in the comments, I'll send you the free guide
I
for
saw
anybody's
that.
listening.
Yeah, I downloaded that the other day. I think that's a really great tool for people.
Oh, you seen it? You actually downloaded it? Thanks very much.
Yeah. Of course, I'm always interested in how other designers are approaching the challenge of, okay, how do you try and match your skills with what someone needs and help them figure out what they want, because sometimes they don't know. And so the observation tool that you put together, I think, is really helpful for people to just kind of get more grounded into their space, into their landscape, start looking around, start developing those observation skills, because that's our starting point, is being able to look around and read the landscape.
Yeah, and from I sort of thought that's the foundation of which everything else is built, and then you bring in your specialties once you realize what do you need. Do you need swales? Do you not need swales?
Exactly.
Because I think people sometimes, beginners, get carried away. I want culture. I want swales. I want this. And so is it appropriate for your property? I want a food forest. Well, can you manage it? I want annual gardens. Have you the time? Just trying to help people that way. So what was I going to say there?
One other thing, Cormac, if you haven't come across him, there's a great fellow named Tad Hargrave. He's got a business called Marketing for Hippies.
Yeah, I do follow him on Facebook.
Yeah, he's got a great one-day workshop called Marketing 101. And I think he mostly just does it in person, but if you ever get the chance to work with him, I highly recommend it. And, I feel like running a business is actually 5 or 6 different jobs and kind of subspecialties. And so it's really hard as a single solopreneur to do all of them well. That's 30 years later, I'm finally wrapping my head around, okay, there's certain parts of this I can manage and hobble together, but I don't necessarily do it well. I've never been good at marketing. And there's other parts of it that, I do okay at, but there's some pieces that it would be, in a perfect world, I'd have somebody else doing that part of it for me.
Yeah, so. I do like the way you work in terms of hiring a crew in just for certain jobs. I think that's very sensible and worth noting. And then, was it Matt LeBon who has the Foodscapers podcast?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So Matt's been on the show before.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah. So if the audience want to check that out, he does have a course as well for starting a foodscaping business. Which is great. Yeah. So all that training you went to, do you want to tell us about that in more detail as well, from the permaculture to the Bill Mollison's training especially?
Well, I didn't actually get the chance to work with Bill, but I did get to see him speak in person. So the Pioneers Conference, which is held in, I believe it's still going, it's in San Francisco, California, every October. The year that I was there, which would have been the early 90s, Vandana Shiva was the keynote speaker. Bill Mollison was there. John Todd of Living Machines was there. Paul Hawken was there, of Natural Capitalism. An amazing fellow who's now passed away. Oh, shucks. I'm really having a bad name day. Excuse me.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Anyways, a biochemist turned farmer who lived in Oregon, and he would do a research paper every year about a different plant family, and it was called Peace Seeds. Alan Capular. He had the Sunday morning spot, and his talk was all about amino acids and how you had different profiles of amino acids in different heritage tomato varieties. So really amazing out there stuff, all in the same room. So that was, I think that was might have been the same year I did my PDC. And then I also got to do a weekend workshop with Amelia Hazlip, who's I think she was a French designer, and she had done this was before Elaine Ingram's work on the importance of the soil microbiome and stuff, but her work was all around companion planting combined with heavy mulching and not tilling the soil, like forming the beds and then basically mulching them. And she had figured out a way to do these deep raised beds that then she wasn't tilling or hardly even digging ever again. In like at that point, she had one site was 4, 5 to 6 years running where she hadn't retilled the soil and disturbed it. Simon Henderson, he came up from Washington. He did a weekend workshop with a bunch of us in the Kootenays. His specialty was seeds. I also had the privilege of getting to meet a man named John Kimmy, who had been adopted by the Hopi tribe and also had a lot to say from their traditions around seeds and seed saving and the importance of seed saving. And also he had learned some of the traditional techniques for growing from the Hopi. Which was really interesting stuff that got later talked about in the Secrets of the Soil book. That's one of the first of that series by Christopher Tompkins and somebody Bird. Anyway, one of the things in there was the Hopi have a tradition of singing to their corn plants. And John Kimmy, who was adopted by them, was one of his mentors there, said, okay, you go plant 2 plots of corn, separate them, make them sure they're far enough away that if you're singing to one plot, the other plot can't hear you. And then you have to go out and sing to every corn plant, not in the morning when it's cool or in the evening, in the heat of the day. You go and sing and give it courage to grow in the heat of the day. And he went out and did that. And I don't remember they didn't have any objective measure for the numbers, but it was different. The yield was different between those 2 plots of corn. So there was all this interesting, and then I worked on a biodynamic farm for a summer. And so all these interesting sort of relationships between plants and people, and how much our interaction with them in a sort of careful, mindful way can affect what happens.
Yeah, so you done your PDC, you had the you got the qualification, you done the practical thing of actually going out and actually starting making designing gardens, and also you're educating yourself. Do you want to just share how the importance of doing that education piece after you've got your qualifications?
Well, it was really important, one, because although my PDC was in New Mexico, our instructor had been all over the world. So she wasn't, our course was somewhat tailored to the site, but we're working with principles that are applicable everywhere. But then when I came home to BC, I had the opportunity to train with another 4 or 5 different designers, and everybody has their take on it and their specialty and their thing that they've learned. Like, the Hopi fellow that I met, Hopi adopted, he'd been doing what he'd been doing for 30 or 40 years at that point. And, Alan Capular was probably 60 or 65 when I heard him speak, and he'd been working on the same plot of land for 20 years. So there's the PDC training, and then there's the practical putting it on the ground and what you learned from doing that. And then there's also learning from all of these other mentors that have accumulated experience and or specialty expertise. Like one winter we helped host a winter greenhouse workshop and learned about some of that things and the sun angles and the insulation and how can you do an actual minimally heated greenhouse in a temperate climate, those sorts of things. I think I was really lucky in the sense that I got my PDC really early. I started designing. I actually started making gardens before I started designing for places that I didn't see or large scale projects. Like I worked up in terms of the scale and consequence of what I was doing, which I think is really valuable. And not that you couldn't do it the other way around. It's just if you have something go wrong on a project that's 10 or 15 or 50 acres, it's totally different scale than something going wrong in your backyard or your neighbor's backyard, and you get a chance to go back and say, okay, let's tweak this. What should we do different here? what are the lessons learned along the way, those kinds of things. So I think both the practical and the theory are really important to do both at the same time if you can, and try and have the opportunity to have a place where you can mess around and play with stuff and experiment in a way that's not going to be that gives you room to grow without making it so potentially expensive, either for clients or at a large scale. So I was lucky that way. I also moved a lot, so some places I got to experiment, and then I didn't get to see what happened 2 or 3 years later, because I ended up moving quite a lot in those years. So.
Yeah. No, that's great. So yeah, it's important of mentorship as well. I take it you were building up contacts and being able to phone someone, finding the right expertise.
Yeah, that's really, really important to have that mentorship piece. And I think if people can build those connections earlier, it's really helpful. I didn't have as many of those until later because of moving and things like that. But I was still very lucky to have the training that I did with different people.
Great stuff. So design wise, do you design on paper, design online, or digital?
I now do digital. I learned, I struggled through learning digital when I first started working with Lindsay. I had been doing on paper for, years and years. And, but then with the pandemic and everything and working with Lindsay, I had to learn to do online. And it was brutal. I think that first design took me something like 50 hours or something ridiculous, because I was learning as I went with the technology and with the graphics and stuff. And I haven't done digital design for a couple of years now, because I've been working more in person. And then when I went back to this spring for a project, I was like, oh no, I've forgotten all my shortcuts. How do I do this again? But I think it's another skill on top of the actual, techniques and toolkits. But I think it's worth learning, because it gives you other opportunities. I mean, when I was working with Lindsay, we got to design stuff as far away as Quebec and Ontario and northern Michigan and California, all kinds of places that, like, it wouldn't be economical for somebody to fly us out there to do a design kind of thing. But with the digital thing, you're sort of, the world's your oyster kind of thing.
And what is it? Adobe Illustrator or Affinity?
No, I ended up, so I use Inkscape, which is a free program. Right. It's vector graphics. It's not as well set up for design as Adobe or even Affinity. I'm probably going to switch to Affinity, but I didn't have the resources to invest in an Adobe license at the point that I was learning digital design. So I just went with something free, and it works well enough. It could be better. You don't have the library kind of setup that you do in either Adobe or Affinity, so that's a little bit tedious, but it's certainly got a definite layers capacity, and you can do gradients and fills, and I've mostly managed to do everything I needed to do with it, with less frustration now than before, but I don't think
yeah. I used Inkscape for my final design exercise on the PDC, and then I used Affinity then. Affinity's free now as well.
Okay.
Yeah, which is good in it. But there's some AI too through Canva. But it's really good now, because you can do things like say to it, just type in give me a greenhouse, a certain dimensions, and you plonk your greenhouse under the mat under your drawing now. It's quite good.
Okay. So, and that's with Canva and like a chat.
So Canva bought Affinity Designer and then came out with Affinity Designer 3.
Okay.
Which is more, I think it's like it's completely different the way it does. It's very similar, but it's different. But you can add like AI images in, basically. So you can give me a greenhouse, give me a fire pit, and then it'll give you like 6 options. You just drag and drop it, and then you have your fire pit. Just enhance the graphics.
Yeah, that part's much quicker.
Yeah. So you mentioned medicinal gardens.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
So I finally went to college in my 40s to become a herbalist.
Great.
So I'm a community herbalist. I had been an amateur herbalist for about 10 years at that point. And so I'm a trained community herbalist, and I'm halfway through a diploma of phytotherapy, also to become a clinical herbalist. We'll see. I'm gone back to more design work at this point, so the school's on the back burner. But one of the things I became really interested in, both in the 10 years before that, when I was just learning about herbalism from other friends and family and things, was this idea of the medicine is always, what you need is usually in your backyard, which turns out to be surprisingly true. Like if you look around and you get to know somebody, and then you look in their yard or what's growing wild near them, it's like, interesting. Okay, that might be just the right thing for that person. So I took that idea, and then have had the opportunity to work with a few clients where I was actually planting gardens for them that included the medicine that they were either working with already. Not that they were going to harvest all their own medicine and make it, but just to have that more direct relationship with the plant, and or planting tea gardens and medicine gardens. Like it's one of my projects. I'm actually going to plant a medicine garden at my brother's place this year. So it's just another facet that we can bring into it, because also a lot of our medicine plants are also our pollinator plants, and they're also our insectary plants, like yarrow. It's very commonly used in food forests to bring the beneficial wasps and things, because it's got that nice umbelliferae flat flower top that all of the predator wasps like to land on. It's a perennial, and it's relatively drought tolerant. It's also amazing medicine, and it can be used for so many different things. Same with comfrey and nettle. So there's all these really common plants that are used in food forest gardens that are also medicine. So it's just been a really nice crossover for me. My brother's design that I spoke about earlier in Victoria, when we did that, I was in school, and so I said, can I fill the understory with medicine? He said, sure. So we now have valerian growing in his garden like a weed. There's medicine, like instead of dandelions, it's all these other medicine plants that are, instead of grass, that's what he's got growing as a weed, is angelica and agrimony and valerian and meadowsweet and all of these things that are part of the Western herbal tradition.
Right. So let's say now my front yard food forest, I haven't cut my grass yet this year, so it's 1.5 foot high. So I'm going out this week, right, to chop it, cut all the grass back now. Once the dandelions, they're gone, they've done their job. They're mostly gone. How would I approach adding medicinals to that garden?
Well, I mean, first thing, I'd take the grass and use it as mulch around your fruit trees, obviously. And then, so what climate are you in, Cormac? Are you in Ireland?
Yeah, I'm a zone 9, but it's not a Florida 9.
Okay, it's more like a BC 9.
Yeah, so it's not, and even at that, it's not so much the plants; it's just what approach would I take. So in terms of cut the grass, do I look at what grows in my area?
Yeah, look around. Go look in your hedgerows. Go look in your hedgerows and see what you can find. I mean, you want the small herbaceous layer, so you're probably going to find some yarrow or some chicory or burdock or herb robert or meadowsweet. I'm trying to think of all the wild things that I know that come from England. Or if
Ireland, not England.
Sorry, from the Isles. I haven't been to Ireland yet, but that's where some great ancestors were from. So maybe I'll get there eventually. But all of the things that you commonly find, like at the bottom of the hedgerows, are probably going to be, in the meadows. That'll be a lot of your sort of herbaceous medicinals will be in there. And there's probably a good book on finding those. But you could start with yarrow and chicory and comfrey. Nettles, you need to have a wetter site for, and also they can get a little out of hand if they get going. Same with any of your mint family, they can kind of take over and they want it a little bit wet. What's your soil like?
Soil. To be honest, I'm not out the front. It's basically I live in a housing estate, so it's like it's crap. It's rubbish. It's not really.
So
it's like
kind of like subsoily, stones and sandy and
sandy, bits of clay, bits of lumps. It's all over the place. I tend to just add compost it and just try and build it up. And then
add compost, and then I'd start. You some yarrow, some comfrey. I mean, even lemon balm, if you can find it. All of those
so
things.
I have a. I was trying to. That's why I'm looking over here. If anybody's thinking, I'm looking over at my books. I had a herb book, so I bought the herbs of. So I bought a book, and I just need to go. I wanted to just plant 10 of them this year and see how I get on.
Do you know Plants for the Future? Do you know that site?
No.
Oh, it's a great site. It's a really good online resource. They've got all kinds of edible listings for edible and permaculture plants.
All right. Is that the PFAF?
Yes, PFAF.
Yeah. I use PFAF. I just know it as PFAF.
Yeah, so PFAF. PFAF it would be a good resource for you, because I think you could look up things that would be more or less native to your climate there, that would be in that herbal understory. And then I would start with, pick maybe a half dozen plants that you want to try, and then plant them out either on the edges of the yard, or you can, make a little spot around the fruit trees and put 2 or 3 of them in around there, so that you're really bringing the pollinators and the predatory insects right into that micro ecosystem around your fruit tree. That can be really helpful. Even things as common as lavender. Lavender is a great medicine. It's also aromatic. It's nice to have under the fruit trees. Those aromatic herbs help keep away some of the bugs that we don't want bothering our fruit trees. So, I started a small food forest here for my landlord, and I did daffodils and lavender, and then I've got we've got dandelion, and we'll put some comfrey and some yarrow in there. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It can just be a few things to get it started.
Yeah, I've been here now in this where I'm now 14 years, and I've tried lavender 4 or 5 times. It dies every winter.
Okay. Yeah, so you don't have the right winter for it. There's different varieties that are more or less hardy. Do you how long is your winter? Like, what's your first frost?
Our first frost is like in December.
That's December. Wow.
Yeah, and our last, I've killed comfrey as well. Whatever's in the soil. But I managed to kill comfrey, which is unkillable, and I managed to kill lavender several times, and I had it out the back, and I've had it out the front, and it doesn't survive for some reason. But as you say, I haven't really knuckled down and tried to figure out why. So someone getting into the application then of the medicine. So I've grown 10 a thing. Have you any advice how they would go and learn how to actually apply it?
So there's all kinds of free courses and mini courses now at this point that you can find, and I'll send you some resources, because with the advent of AI, everybody and their dog can write an article about something that may or may not be properly referenced. So you do have to be careful about your sources for herbal medicine advice in regards to AI and proper training, like you do for everything else now. But there's some great resources. There's Rosemary Gladstar she's an American herbalist, but she's got a free little mini course. There's a great podcast. I've learned a lot while I've been not in school, listening to herbalists podcasts about how they use certain herbs and things. And sometimes it can be as simple as, here's a 3 herb tea recipe, like lavender, chamomile, and lemon balm. It's a really nice tea mix that you can make. It can be quite helpful if people are feeling stressed at the end of the day, or they have a tummy upset, or they're feeling anxious about those things, because those 3 herbs will do all kinds of things all together. So teas are a really nice way to start. That's usually how I introduce things to people, because that you can find something that's in your garden, and then also you're not taking, generally it's milder medicine. It's not that it won't work, but you're going to have less chance of having a really strong reaction to something if it's just in a tea form. And then from teas you get into oxymels and decoctions and other kinds of preparations using either larger quantities of herbs that then you're concentrating somehow, or using like making dried herb tinctures and decoctions, like boiled teas and things like that.
I suppose it's important at this stage to say, do not take anything unless you consult a herbalist.
It's really important, because we like to think of herbs as being, just food as medicine, which is true, but it has to do with quantity and dosage. Like I did a course last winter about herb-drug interactions with a pharmacist who's also a herbalist at my college. And one of the case studies he gave us was a man who was on blood thinners for cardiovascular disease, who started taking over-the-counter garlic pills. And he took garlic pills, and there was something else that he added to his diet. And it was enough between those two that over 2 or 3 weeks, he ended up getting more bruising and was at risk of internal bleeding because of the combination of effects of the strong herbs that he was taking plus his medication. So that's always the risk with, if you're going to start taking something at a therapeutic dose and you're taking medication, we always have to check, what is somebody taking, and is it going to double? Is the herb going to do the same thing in their body? That means that it's too much, like it's making their blood too thin, or it's lowering their blood pressure too much, or those kinds of things. But that's more the case when you're taking concentrated extracts. So that's like tinctures or capsules that you would get at a health food store or things like that. A cup of herbal tea is pretty much the most benign way to start, unless I have heard cases of somebody taking like 6 cups a day of the same herb for 2 or 3 weeks and having an adverse reaction, kind of thing. But it's the moderation piece becomes really important.
Great stuff. Yeah, I have a video somewhere of me stinging myself on stinging nettles while making herbal tea.
Yeah, I always
wear gloves.
I get stung every year, and there are actually the nettle stings are an old remedy actually for osteoarthritis, where you purposely sting the joints that have arthritis, and then the counter irritant effect means that the body sort of, in the process of dealing with the nettle sting, deals with some of the other inflammation that's going on. But nettle tea is a great herb. It's a very nutritive herb. Like that, you could eat as much probably in quantity for the month of the year, the spring here at least, that it's in really peak season. And I have never heard of anybody overdosing on that, because it is also a food. It's super rich in minerals, and it's really nice to have in the spring. It's also one of the things that helps with hay fever. So we've got all these wonderful things that show up at just the right time. Like fresh pressed nettle juice apparently is one of the best herbal remedies we have for hay fever. So you can't. Do you have nettles? What do you have in the edges of your yard that's happy that might be medicine?
Yeah, nettles.
Nettles. There you go.
Nettles. There are a lot of nettles, not a lot of dandelions. Yeah. I think I made a list of them one day. I can't remember now off the top of my head. No, plenty of stuff. I was just asking in general for people, just rather the approach.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on now to your work with Permaculture Canada?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
On all these other things.
No, well, that's what I say. You go down these rabbit holes and side conversations.
So I joined Permaculture Canada right when Lindsay started it a couple of years ago. And then I've just had the opportunity of doing our first project together this spring. I got to do the research for a design proposal that she did for the Kwiakah Nation out of Campbell River. and we were doing a 5-acre proposal site for them. They're in the process of trying to reclaim some land to have a village site for their tribe. Their nation rather. They're a very small nation. There's only 20 people left, and I had the privilege of meeting one of the younger members and doing a site visit outside of Campbell River. So this is somewhere that they hope to have a village site one day, because their traditional territory is up Phillips Arm, which is a remote site. It's an hour and a half by boat into in Europe you'd call it a fjord, but in here they're quite long inlets into the mainland where they had their traditional territories, but there's not that many of them left, so they're looking for a site closer to town. So that was really fun. I got to do a bunch of research and meet them, and then Lindsay came out and did a full site visit at the end of April or beginning of May, and she got to actually go out to their territory by boat, and they're doing some amazing work. They've gotten some funding to take over the stewardship of some of the land out there that's been logged, and they're doing regenerative farming, regenerative forestry studies with Suzanne Samart, who's a UBC professor, looking at the connections between the trees and the way they pass nutrients back and forth. And they've discovered it's not just between related trees, it's all the different trees. So they're working on a research project out there, and they've also taken over one of the fish farm offices and have a marine research project going out there. So they're looking at potential kelp farming in the future and other economic opportunities that'll be more regenerative based rather than extraction based. So it was really a privilege to work on that project with her.
And you got to meet her?
I didn't know we got to meet in person after 5 years. Yeah, we finally got to meet in person. She was down in Victoria the same time I was, so we had a really fun dinner together. I got to hear about all her recent travels in the South this winter, and then also the projects she's doing with Graham. So that was great. Yeah, look forward to working together some more.
Yeah, it's always nice meeting internet friends.
Yes, yeah, it's great. Yeah. And then there's one other project I've been working on this spring, which I'm really excited about. If we have a couple minutes, I'll share that as well. So I'm living on a small island called Cortes, and we have a nonprofit housing society here that's been trying to build affordable rental housing for a number of years, and they got the funds together to go ahead this year. So they've started a 5-acre site where they're going to have 9 duplexes eventually of rental housing, and they're built with local lumber as much as possible and recycled lumber, and there's solar setup for solar electric, and then in-floor heat in the pads of the buildings, because we have power outages quite frequently in the winter here. And so this way the buildings will stay warm for, they figure, about 3 days at a time. They keep them warm without any external heat source. And so I had the privilege of getting to be part of the team to consult and help build the almost an acre community food forest there, which we had a community planting day for this spring. We've got 35 different fruit trees, and we're pushing the edge a little bit. We've got pomegranates and feijoas and a few things that are technically outside our zone here, but we're going to see what we can do in terms of getting things to grow a little farther north than they normally would. I've got pomegranates in my garden as well. They're 5 years old now. They haven't fruited yet, but there's a fellow in bits farther south of me in Zone 9 who's getting fruit, but he's got just a glass house, not a full greenhouse, but a glass house for them. So that's been really exciting. It's been great to be working in my home community with a project like that on that scale. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, no, that's class. You mentioned earlier you're trying to focus more on teaching. Are you doing any teaching?
I'm going to be teaching this summer. I'm doing a trio of free community classes. There'll be sort of a crossover between regenerative gardening, introduction to permaculture, fire smart landscaping, and then also herbal medicine gardens. So try and fit all of those 4 things into 3 classes over the summer.
Class. Have you ever heard of school? SKWL?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. It's a really cool platform. So I have a community-owned school for vine permaculture. It's basically called the Productive Property. It's basically me just developing my own property, but for yourself, the likes of teaching. I would definitely recommend to have a look at it.
Great.
They are looking at there's an active audience here, but like herbal medicine would definitely be and herbal gardens. I would definitely I think you'd have an audience there for
Great.
yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great lead. It's always fun trying to find, new ways to connect people with permaculture.
Yeah. No, it's I'm still finding my way on it.
We always are. I mean,
Yeah.
it keeps changing. I mean, and it keeps changing too. Different stages of life, you want to be doing different things. So
Yeah. So Maria, are you on social media at all?
I'm not. I should be, but I'm not at all.
So if anybody wants to get Maria, go through Permaculture Canada, then I take it.
Permaculture Canada or my own website, earthlightpermaculture.com.
Yeah. And I'll put that link in the description. There's a link to Permaculture Canada. I'll also put a link in the description for if you want to design from Permaculture Canada. We are an affiliate partner of Permaculture Canada, and then if you want Maria to do it, just request from Maria.
I've been happy to do it. I'm really enjoying getting to do some more designs and builds the last few years. I've done 3 or 4 now, all up and down Vancouver Island, and then also working on Cortes here. It's been great.
Great stuff. Any final words, Maria? Any final thoughts?
Just thank you so much, Cormac. This has been really fun. And I'm really glad to see all the different ways that people are getting the word out and helping people learn about permaculture and get their hands in the earth and get back to having a close relation with the natural world.
That's great, Maria. Thanks. We'll be doing some more roundtables if you're interested as well in the future, where we get 3 or 4 people on to talk about it. I think we could definitely do a full episode on herbal gardens.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Okay, we could get Jen McCulson. I'm not sure I'm saying her name right. She's also part of Permaculture Canada. She's another herbalist. She's in Calgary as well. She'd be into it as well, I think.
Yeah, that'll be class.
Yeah.
Great stuff. I'll definitely take you up on that. Guys, that's been the Permaculture Vine podcast or with Permaculture Canada. Again, there's the link to the school. If you go over to school and check it out. We're also I'm doing a few consultations this month. I'll put the link in the description for that as well. Just on site observation. If you're not sure, if you're looking at your property, I can help you out. And if you want a full design, then go over to Permaculture Canada. Maria, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that chat. And for those listening, thanks for listening. And we'll get these the next time we get these. Apologies, the podcasts have been very sparse at the minute, to say the least. But that's life, so I'm not worried about it too much. I'm sure I'll be ramping them back up soon. But last 6 months has been just a transition. Kids transitioning to a different age group, busy, trying to balance. It's like everything develops, so that's life. I'm not complaining. I'll see you all next week. Cheers.
Thanks so much, Cormac.